All right, thanks for that, Zach. I appreciate that. I've never heard of Team Red, White, and Blue, and it sounds very interesting to me. I'd like to see if we get a chapter going in Springfield or something. So, next we have Dr. Anke Pinkert, who is an associate professor of German Media and Cinema Studies at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, where she is also an instructor in the Education Justice Project. She received her PhD in 2000 from the University of Chicago. Dr. Pinkert.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I think I have to adjust the mic a little, or move here. Okay. So I would like to thank Richard Tapia and the Illinois Higher Board of Education for inviting me to this symposium, and I feel very honored to be here and to share this session with the other panelists. I know that presenters generally express their gratitude before they speak, but what I'm going to present today, which I think is going to be a little bit different from what you have heard so far, is something that is very close to my heart and very close to the kind of transformative work that social justice projects can model and can perform. So I hope that you will be open to open your eyes and your perspective to what we are going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about, based on the collaborations with our students in the Education Justice Project today. The question that I want you to keep in mind as I'm walking through my presentation is really how we can illuminate our greater interconnectedness with each other. That is, how is it that we can account for our commonalities and differences in a precarious world where really a lot of prejudice tends to create boundaries and barriers. And it is in this shift between rather rigidly held conceptions of self and other to a greater sense of openness and receptivity that I would like to locate transformational learning that is based in mindfulness. So before I tell you more about this, I thought I would give you a little bit of a background and tell you why I'm here. As you can probably tell, my native language is not English, it is German. And not only am I from Germany, but I also grew up in East Germany, in East Berlin. I grew up very close to the Berlin Wall. That was really just 100 meters away from the house where my family lived. And as you all know, in 1989, the wall collapsed, and a huge historical shift took place in Germany. And some of you might be too young, but others might be able to remember that there were many images of people cheering on top of the Berlin Wall, celebrating this change that had taken place in Germany. And at the time, I was very joyful about this change that had taken place in my life and in Germany. But at the same time, I also felt a weird, diffuse sense of apprehension and displacement and perhaps loneliness that I could not quite articulate in a context when, for all intents and purposes, East Germans were welcomed and celebrated in West Germany. But there was a certain sense of being alien or foreign in that new country that actually lingered quite some time, for quite a few years, in my awareness. And it was only later, when I did my graduate studies, and as part of my graduate studies, I also researched representations of returning war veterans in post-war German film, that I could also see there was a connection that in 45 there was a very intense shift that took place. In 89, for very different historical reasons, there was a big change in Germany that affected people deeply. And in both contexts, I could see how there were challenges and difficulty of reintegration into that kind of new possibility and new society that opened up. And it is this kind of lingering feeling of a deeper understanding of the challenges of reintegration into a new type of society that I think is also echoed in the lives of the students in the Education Justice Project, students who are currently incarcerated. So we're going to move to a slightly, or not to a slightly, we're going to move to a very different context in which people struggle with this experience of having to cross between very different kinds of time and space zones, and an experience that in itself can be rather traumatic. So I'm an instructor in the Education and Justice Project. I started that work 4 years ago, and similarly to the very passionate stories that we have heard from other panelists before, I find this work to be particularly meaningful, and it is not just teaching a course at Danville Correctional Center. It's really a kind of work that has begun to encompass my life, my research, and my interaction with people in this country. So in the Education Justice Project, we approach learning as a co-creative engagement. And my intention is that by the end of this presentation, I will have shown you it is through a kind of attunement to what is, a kind of attunement to the present moment, internally and externally, as one of our students in the Education Justice Project put it, that we are able to become present to one another, that we are able to step outside of ourselves, that we are able to open ourselves towards others, while feeling our own out-of-jointness or our feeling of being different. Hopefully you will recognize how this might resonate with you as you are navigating the complex terrain of re-entry and reintegration of yourself or others into college and civilian life. So mindfulness is indeed a pedagogical, psychological, and spiritual concept which has a long tradition in Buddhist philosophy. But foremost, it is a felt sense. It's really a felt experience, an embodied experience of becoming aware and noticing the present moment without judgment, or at least without judgment to the degree that that is possible. Mindfulness and meditation are not synonymous, but the practice of meditation certainly provides a pathway into our internal lives and the lives of others. So as I'm going through this perhaps rather challenging material, I would invite you to just notice your own presence and how you are in this room connecting to other people and to the material that I'm presenting. I think a lot of times we're so used to getting information and taking it in mentally, but maybe just notice how your thoughts might be wandering away, and then please come back to the material that I'm presenting. I would like to give you a sense of the EJP universe and its place in our larger society, and let the students speak themselves about their approach to transformational learning at the front line of the prisons, and in many ways at the periphery of our culture. Here, perhaps not so much unlike veterans, they battle with isolation, misrecognition, and stigma as they traverse realms of rupture and trauma while seeking new pathways into life. The United States has the largest prison population in the world. Nearly 2.3 million people are currently behind bars, hidden from the world in plain sight. They are disproportionately poor and African American. And the media works hard to create a divide between us, those who are free and innocent, and them, convicts, criminals, turning us as consumers of prison shows into penal spectators. But increasingly more voices are publicly heard about the bankruptcy of our penal system, which fosters racial and economic inequalities. And depending where you find yourselves on the political spectrum, you might be more or less open to these systematic explanations. And here is where mindfulness is important. Mindfulness asks us to simply notice the thoughts and feelings that come up, the kind of judgments we generate and we have when we hear things that we are not agreeing with or that are unfamiliar. So mindfulness helps us to feel that kind of pull and tug and to orient ourselves in the midst of chaos, as one of our students puts it, rather than reacting to it. Obviously, there are many complex reasons why people may end up in prison, and I can't really tackle this here in this presentation. But research has also shown that in the aftermath of war, the numbers of inmates with prior military service rises steadily. As you know best, when soldiers come back from war, part of the war comes back with them. In recent years, as we just heard, rates of PTSD, substance abuse, and suicide among veterans have ticked steadily upward. A certain number of veterans suffering from mental health issues will invariably end up in jail or prison. After Vietnam, the number of inmates with prior military service rose until reaching a peak in 1985, when more than 1 in 5 was a veteran. I think that's an astonishing number. And it's really hard to come by current numbers of incarcerated people who also served as veterans. But one recent study estimated that approximately 200,000 incarcerated people are veterans, which again I think is an astonishing number. And the researcher who co-authored this study said it would likely take years for these numbers to reflect the toll on veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. She says, generally veterans don't get in trouble immediately. There's usually a big gap between leaving the service and entering the criminal justice system for those who are having these struggles. When I asked the students in the mindfulness group in the Education Justice Project, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that group in a moment, when I asked them about feedback for this presentation and expressed my hesitation to interconnect the experiences of such very different, potentially marginalized groups, such as veterans and incarcerated people, it made intuitively more sense to them. They shared, "It is difficult in here, but it's like war in here. The structures are dehumanizing, or we are dehumanized as people." Others said, "Stuff happens, but the war is also in you. You have to confront that and learn to accept and to forgive yourself. It is hard." And I also heard, "Going back to society, people will not understand you. Coming back to the world, a world that does not understand you, you cannot communicate what you have experienced. And then there is stigma and shame attached to former incarceration. How do you face that? How do you confront that? It's not that this year did not happen." So as you can tell from these thoughts of students in the Education Justice Project, prison is a place of stress, And although there is much debate and, in fact, research about the psychological effects of incarceration, literature describing the prison as a site of trauma has only recently emerged. Incarceration experience can promote a sense of helplessness, greater dependence, modes of introversion, and being on guard. And depending on the type of prison, the psychological suffering is confounded by the knowledge, witnessing, or the experience of violence. So these are intractable, complex, and deeply seated, often invisible problems in our society. How then do we attempt to tackle them small scale through an approach to transformational learning in the Education Justice Project? So EJP was founded in 2008. It's actually a relatively young organization under the leadership of Professor Rebecca Ginsburg, an associate professor of landscape architecture at the U of I. And the mission of the Education Justice Project is to build a model college and prison program that demonstrates the positive impacts of higher education upon incarcerated people, their families, the communities from which they come, and society as a whole. And I just wanted to show you a couple of images so you have an idea of what our interactions across these very different realms of society look like. So here you see one of our focus groups, a format we often use in order to generate ideas for projects that in many cases are based on the initiatives of our students in the project. So the students are not taking only for credit U of I college classes, but there's also extracurricular programming, including a theater group, the mindfulness group, a group on productive prison landscapes. And in addition, the students themselves have organized as their own way of community outreach and community service. They have organized teaching groups such as language partners, where the students in the Education Justice Project teach English as a second language to other incarcerated men who don't speak English at Danville itself, or another of these groups is the Chicago Violence Group, in which students in EJP have researched and studied Chicago neighborhoods as site of violence, and they're telling their own stories about their profound personal transformations and educational transformations that they have undergone through their writing to high school students in Chicago. So that was the image of our lecture series, where people from the outside and inside come together in order to listen to speakers and engage in conversation. Here you see our resource room filled with books where we hold our classes. And this is an image of the convocation in spring 2012, which we held at the gym at the prison. And you can see that the students themselves speak and present at these events. So it's very important for us to have this kind of reciprocal engagement that we also heard about earlier. So then in the summer of 2010, I don't know if you can see that, but in the summer of 2010, I myself and John Jones, a psychologist in Champaign, started to found a mindfulness discussion group as part of the Education Justice Project. And here you see a group of our students who also collaborated with me on this presentation today. And we meet weekly and engage not only in shared meditation sits, but we also read texts that are based in a mindfulness tradition. And we bring this kind of awareness of the present moment into the entire program into the entire educational programming of the Education Justice Project as a kind of transformational learning where we are really aware of the kind of prejudices, biases, tensions that we might bring to our interactions with those whom we might consider to be different. So as one of our students here put it, you have to be open for the possibility of education, be open to transformation through education, and mindfulness helps with that. So scholars in educational philosophy acknowledge transformative learning refers to the process by which we transform our taken for granted frames of reference, meaning perspectives, habits of mind, mindsets, to make them more inclusive, discriminating, open, emotionally capable of change, and reflective, so that they may generate beliefs and opinions that will prove more true or justified to guide action. After all, there are no fixed truths or totally definite forms of knowledge, and because circumstances change, the human condition may be best understood as a continuous effort to negotiate contested meanings. So let us linger for just a moment here over the notion of the frame, the taken for granted frames of reference. In many ways, it is through these frames that we can apprehend or indeed fail to apprehend, that we see or don't see the lives of others as lost or injured or the same or different. So just to use our frames here of veteran and non-veteran, incarcerated, non-incarcerated, civilian and non-civilian as example. These frames are, of course, not just our own. They are socially, culturally, and politically saturated, and they are themselves operate and organize our experience. While we might not be immediately able to change those conditions, an approach to transformational learning based in mindfulness helps to expose and shine light on the workings of these shifting frames. As we are bringing our attention to the breath, metaphorically and literally speaking, over and over again, our mind wanders. It produces thoughts, ideas, concepts to be recognized. And we can just label them thinking and then bring our attention back to the breath. As the students put it, mindfulness is the observation of existence in its most intimate forms. It is the practice of paying attention and being aware. And now, in the last few years, neuroscientists have even shown that our brain actually lights up in this practice. What am I doing with time? Okay. So then, what does this form of transformational learning look like in the classroom? In the classroom, this responsibility to experience, to stay present with yourself and the others in the classroom can be achieved by creating a space for what the psychologist Mark Epstein calls bare attention. So he calls that phenomenon of attentiveness to one another, bare attention. And this kind of non-reactive attentiveness towards everything that arises is at once completely natural and enormously difficult. And it is indeed the starting point for a critical pedagogy of empathy and compassion that develops our ability to participate imaginatively in the life of another, including the lives of those who occupy positions that appear foreign or opposed to our own. In closing then, let me bring this back to our context here. In a February article entitled "After War, A Failure to Imagine," Phil Lay, a former Marine who served in Iraq, observes an impasse at communication between veterans and non-veterans he often encounters. The comment or sentiment, "I could never imagine what you've been through," he said. It is the civilian counterpart to the veterans. You wouldn't know you weren't there. Believing war is beyond words is an abrogation of responsibility, he says. It lets civilians off the hook from trying to understand and veterans from trying to explain. Instead, Lay says, listen to their story and try to imagine being in it, no matter how hard or uncomfortable, incomplete, or perhaps even fraudulent that might feel. You have to try. It is a powerful moment when you discover a vocabulary exists for something that you thought incommunicably unique to your own experience. As Mark Epstein, whom I mentioned earlier, pointed out, we should be careful not to diminish the specific and horrific experiences of war, genocide, incarceration, or everyone's losses for that matter. But he says trauma is not just the result of major disasters. It does not happen only to some people. An undercurrent of trauma runs through ordinary life, shot through as it is with poignancy of impermanence. I like to say, he states, if we are not suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, we are suffering from pre-traumatic stress disorder. There is no way to be alive in our unstable and unpredictable world without being conscious of the potential for disaster. One way or another, death and its cousins, old age, illness, accidents, separation, and loss, hangs over all of us. The willingness to face traumas, be they large, small, primitive, or fresh, is the key to healing from them. They may never disappear in the way we think they should, but maybe they don't need to. Trauma is an ineradicable aspect of life. He says we are human as a result of it and not in spite of it. So mindful learning can help elucidate these vulnerabilities that in some sense we share, but that are also different. It can help us sit with them and respond with clarity and in due time through concerted action. Perhaps in order to perform as equals, we have to imagine that we are alike. So when you leave this symposium or this panel today and you go out into the world and you have your lunch and you encounter other people, then maybe you can do this small, tiny mindfulness exercise, which goes like this. So often we walk around and we have, as I said earlier, labels and judgments about other people and about ourselves. But sometimes if we can say, just like me, and go on with whatever we have to do. And then we see another person, and maybe we feel how our preconceptions are coming up, and we say gently and without any judgment, just like me. So if you do that small exercise, maybe you can pay attention and see if there is just a tiny shift in perspective and whether or not you can see that these gaps between veterans and non-veterans, incarcerated, non-incarcerated, men and women, students, administrators, faculties, if these gaps soften or maybe close a little bit more. Thank you. Do we have time? Yeah, sure. If you have questions, I'm very happy to engage them. Yeah. On the outside? Yeah. So that's a very good question. I think I didn't get there. So the members, we have about 40 members on the outside of the Education Justice Project, and they are graduate students and faculty and community members. We also have an undergraduate association, the Prison Justice Project, and those are students who are very involved with these issues that I've been talking about on our campus, and who are also trying to bring awareness to our actual campus community. But at this point, they are not inside of Danville.
Thank you, Dr. Pinkert. If somebody in the back could tell me if we are ready for lunch. We are. All right, so it's time to refuel, which I understand is on the other side of this curtain. We'll go over there and form a line or two. I'm not sure what the setup is. You'll see it, and grab your food and come back over here and talk, and we'll pick it up here in about 25, 30 minutes with our keynote speaker. Enjoy lunch now. Thank you. The fact that, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago when the Illinois Board of Higher Education approached me about having this conference, we had a discussion and we came to an agreement that we should pull in some student veterans to help form the agenda. And I believe that out of the 5 or 6 people that we had on that little committee, and we had some conference calls, I believe 4 of them are here today, and I think it would be remiss if we didn't recognize them for helping us set the agenda. So if when I call your name, if you could just stand up to be recognized, and if I miss somebody, hold me accountable, okay? First, we got Cassandra Dodge from Illinois State University, who sang the national anthem earlier. I've been told that Paul Copeland is here, but not a student, definitely. Okay, we're getting some bad info here. He was definitely involved in the calls, though. Alan Fitzpatrick from Lakeland College, which I know is over there talking. And Christopher Cook from University of Illinois Springfield. Did I miss anyone? Having recognized these individuals, I think it's important to note that we would like to have another session again next year. And if you're interested in helping set the agenda, please let one of us know, and we'll make sure that we get your name and contact information, and so that we can better serve the student veterans that are on campus, and that's what's most important to us. All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce one of our keynote speakers. I should, before I make the introduction, state that Representative Chapa-LaVia is not able to make it today due to illness. So we'll be graced with one keynote speaker, Dr. Charlotte Warren, who is a veteran and the current president of Lincoln Land Community College in Springfield. Dr. Warren is a colonel retired and an honorary brigadier general for the Georgia National Guard. She is the first female president of Lincoln Land College. She came to Lincoln Land Community College in May 2006 from Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio, where she was the president of the Community College Alliance and vice president of the university's virtual campus. She holds a PhD in counseling psychology from the College of Education, University of Virginia, a master's degree in psychiatric mental health nursing, and a bachelor's degree in nursing, both from Virginia Commonwealth University. Dr. Warren taught in research universities and community college settings for 30 years. From 2002 to 2005, she served as provost of the Lawrenceville campus of Georgia Perimeter College. Prior to that appointment, she was assistant academic vice president for continuing and corporate education at Georgia Perimeter College in Clarkston. From 1997 to 2000, she was chair of the Department of Nursing at Georgia Perimeter. She was a psychotherapist in private practice from 1992 to 1998, and now she's here today to make a keynote address to us. Dr. Warren?
don't know about all of you, but that made me tired. It just means I'm old. And I will give one caveat. I have served in the military. I've served in the National Guard. I served for 21 years. But I will not put myself in the ranks beside you because I am not a veteran. I did not. I have done local duty. I have done disaster duty. I went to Hurricane Katrina. But I have not been deployed overseas. So I will not put myself in your ranks. You have certainly far exceeded anything that I've accomplished. Due to timing, call it good luck or bad luck, and one never knows, depends on your perspective. I did serve 21 years. I never went away from home for long periods as you did. However, I'm somewhat knowledgeable about some of your experiences. My first knowledge came as a VA nurse. Back at the end of Vietnam, I worked in the VA hospital. I was clinical program coordinator for psychiatry. And at that time, we were still on the verges of what battle fatigue was about and had no real sense that there was anything called PTSD. We knew that so many of our military brought back physical wounds, but many more had brought back wounds that we couldn't see. That was my introduction to direct evidence that war is hell. Many years later, I got crazy. I got old, waited to the last minute and joined the Guard. I had many life experiences and a number of degrees under my belt, so for me, it was great opportunity. They let me stretch my wings. I was a nurse, I was an S3 of a medevac battalion, I was an XO, I was deputy commander of a medical command, and I was an IG. I was deployed to Katrina and saw enough devastation and death at that to fill my imagination of what many of you have experienced in your careers. All that to say, I know a little bit about your past lives, but I've not walked in your shoes. But what I am quite knowledgeable of is education. I've been a faculty member, an administrator, and a president for most of my life. So today I want to share with you a little bit about what I know about those two worlds colliding for you as students. Now, I didn't start my talk off as you're supposed to with military briefings, and that's to tell you what I'm going to talk about. I did forego death by PowerPoint. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is what I know about you as veterans, what we have learned about what will help you, some skills that you need to incorporate in your experiences and in your pathway, and a little bit that colleges know, but what we need from you in order to be doing a better job. We're doing okay, but we're not doing the best we can do for our veterans. So you are special people with your own set of unique needs. You're not singled out today because you're different or because your challenges dealing with your past life experiences. You've done something special for us and made many sacrifices all along the way. It means that your lives have taken different pathways, but that we don't always understand. Mostly you're precious commodities and have a great deal more to give to our country. We have just not figured out all the ways to help you get there. The men and women who have served and then come to our colleges tend to be mature, dedicated, and responsible. They're very serious about their education. They've served in 135 countries around the world. Many have been in combat regions, even more serving around the world, have had other diverse responsibilities. You have seen and experienced many cultures, and those experiences have enriched you as students. You have, compared to the average American citizen, worked and lived in very unusual circumstances. Many of you have served long deployments away from home. You are back and readjusting to living a more normal existence, however you define normal. You have faced major transitions as you have re-entered the civilian world. At this point in our military history, there would be few to none who did not choose to join the military. Reasons are as many and varied as there are individuals. For some, it was 911 and a call to arms. For some, it was a door to education. For others, it was a steady income. Others, it was being part of a team working for something special and greater than what any one of you could do alone. Whatever the reason, once you're finished, the move back to civilian life has happened. Life as you have known it for a while has changed. You have changed. And now, once again, you find yourselves facing a new start, finding yourselves, finding an opportunity, finding a future. There's been an exchange of a rucksack for a book bag, a mess tent for a cafeteria, camouflage for school colors. But those are just the obvious challenges. This isn't just an adjustment to college life, but also an adjustment to civilian life, not always so easy. For most veterans, the transition from military life to the comforts and challenges of home will be fast, but not simple. Most veterans will face the challenges and handle them well, but for some, it is a challenge just transitioning back to civilian life, much less becoming a student. As veterans, you know that there are many challenges that you have faced as a result of injuries of war, and colleges and universities have support systems to help you with those, and you need to utilize those resources. But what I want to talk to you about today is just the day-to-day moving from a service member to a student role, and that one can be very daunting. As you know, record numbers of veterans have been returning home from war and heading to college. Just as we have many unique students in our classes, you as student veterans are unique with a myriad of experiences and concerns that you bring to the classroom. In some ways, you are no different than any other student, and that you have to earn the grades and you have to meet the requirements for our classes. And like any other community of students at colleges, you deserve and need our respect and our support. But you also need consideration for your unique circumstances and experiences. In particular, you need faculty and staff who are willing to help with the complexities of admissions, registration, and returning to an academic setting. In returning home, you as veteran students have brought and continue to bring such enrichment to our campus, opportunities for the whole campus, students, faculty, and staff to experience a more vibrant social exchange, academic growth, and public service and awareness. In many cases, you're taking the lead in transforming our campuses, improving conditions for fellow veterans, and enriching campus life for everyone. Racially and economically, you constitute a more varied group than student populations of many colleges. The racial and ethnic makeup of the military actually reflects, roughly, the demographics of the nation. However, the kind of diversity that you bring to campus transcends standard measures. You are different from your college peers in terms of your experience and your maturity. Most of you spent your post-high school years differently than your classmates. Many of you have seen combat, interacted with foreign populations, and developed strong leadership abilities. You bring a wealth of experience and skills. But most of all, you bring a wealth of understanding of the human condition, born often through suffering that leads to compassion. A diverse campus is one that brings together students who have experienced life through various lenses and uses their experience to enhance the education of others. While culture, race, and gender are more traditional lenses through which life is viewed, you as student veterans bring a very unique perspective. So what are we seeing in our veteran populations? At my college last year, veterans made up 8% of the student body. Veterans come to us with high expectations and many challenges due to the complexity of funding, plans to transfer credits, military experiences, and physical or emotional issues. Many vets showing up at our doors are the first in their families to go to college, and they also bring new challenges, some showing up just weeks after leaving the service. For them, the personal challenge of just walking down the halls and feeling safe may be greater than those of becoming a student or choosing a major. There are many transitions issues that veterans face upon returning home. These you know about, but I'm just going to point them out again because I think it's important for you to realize, to think hard about what you've gone through, what you're going through, and how we can help you get to the other side. Confidence. Many of you have been out of school for a long time. It's a new environment, and you rightly approach it warily. Although once you get started, you generally are fine. Community. You were members of a very close-knit military community and may feel a sense of withdrawal or even alienation as you enter a civilian society. You might be wary of fellow students and instructors, as you may think that no one understands your experience, or you may feel that you're experiencing prejudice because of your service. Family. You need to reestablish family relationships. The veteran who has been deployed and his or her family need to get back together again and become a traditional family, whatever that may be for you. Proud and unwilling to ask. School is not easy to negotiate for anyone, but veterans have a certain sense of pride, and some either don't want to ask for help because they feel they should go it alone, or they just don't want to talk about their experiences. So more specifically, I bring some challenges that you as veterans have to rise to meet. You're developing an identity other than as a soldier, sailor, or airman. I know the challenges when your work is your life, and that life is totally wrapped around title and duty. Finding a new identity is not easy. You have to find a way to connect with other college students. Find something you're interested in and become integrated into the college life. It is a snapshot of the real civilian world, and if you can integrate into college, then you can integrate back into the workforce and your community. Find importance and meaning in experiences. There are groups dealing with real-life issues on campus. The challenges are different, the world is different, but there's still many opportunities on a college campus to make a difference. But also, don't forget to have a little fun while you're there. School is not the military, but it is a system. Learn the rules and how to negotiate them. We're not engulfed with quite as many rules and regulations, but we do have a pretty clear pathway on how to get things done. Just like the military, knowing how the system and knowing how to use it and maneuver it through it is everything. Get involved and get past a sense of boredom. Being in the military, being in combat, it's an adrenaline rush. It's getting up and going and moving every day, every moment, being on point. Every day and every class that you're in is not a life-death situation, not one like you found yourselves in the past. And sometimes it's hard to see the relevance. Look for it. It's there. Believe it or not, there is a reason for most of the courses. I'm not going to say all, but for most of the courses that you're taking. Make some sense out of that experience. Although it is clear that you can take care of yourselves, probably no one was successful in your situation without the support of your unit. There are teams at schools, but you have to open your minds and your hearts to let them in. Past experience has been to shoulder your own burden, but the path will be a whole lot easier if you let your parents, spouses, families, and friends support you and help you in this new adventure. You as veterans have been great students and are being very successful. Student Veterans of America recently completed a project called the Million Records Project to review the achievements of veterans in higher education. They looked at 1 million veterans' records. So far, the project has shown that for the current generation of veteran students, you've been strong. 51.7% of those studied earned a post-secondary degree or certificate, despite the challenges they faced. That's a little lower than the traditional graduation rate, but higher than for your non-traditional peers. You are persisting and you are graduating. Like other non-traditional students, you tend to be older, have families to support, juggle employment, and go to school. But despite all those challenges as student veterans, you're persisting toward your educational goals and succeeding. At both the 2- and 4-year degree level, the majority of veterans who graduate do so within 4 to 5 years, a rate similar to the traditional student population. So you're on the right road. What advice is there? What can you do as students, and what can you help other veterans to do to be successful? First, be realistic. You may need to start with a few courses to ease a transition. Limit coursework to what's reasonable for you. Don't overload. You have a lot of new things in your life when you come back to school. Follow a daily schedule and keep organized. All of a sudden you find yourself without a place with orders and schedules and places to be at all minutes of the day. Reach out to other veterans on campus for social support. Get to know professors. Tell them you're a veteran. Ask for advice on how to be successful in the classroom. Find study partners when possible. Take advantage of the school's academic tutoring and academic counseling service. Recognize signs of stress and look for daily ways to manage. Practice regular exercise and relaxation techniques to help reduce anxiety and improve concentration. Really important, fight isolationism. Participate in student activities to break down barriers. Become a part of the campus community. I know as veterans we have veterans groups and we try and do things to support veterans, but again, you're part of a larger campus, and we'd love to see you engaged and help others learn more about your experiences and help them to grow. Recognize that others may or may not agree with you or your military service. Sometimes you're going to have to agree to disagree. Be prepared for direct questions about your service, sometimes in very public. seemingly inappropriate situations. Practice ahead of time how to respond. Respectfully decline to talk about things that are uncomfortable. Family, friends, trusted classmates, and professors can be a good source of stability and support. Staying in contact with them may help ease the transition and provide a good source of feedback for thoughts and concerns. But we also have a responsibility as colleges to help. As we all go back to campus, whether you're staff here or students, there's some practices that colleges can and should talk about to help support our student veterans. First, we have to listen. We have to do a better job of listening. We need to hold roundtables with administrators and student veterans, or have student veterans focus groups. We need help in assessing the institution's strengths and weaknesses, considering our programs, our services, and policies that could be initiated and improved. If you don't have a veterans group, start one. We need campus homepages with welcome for vets and links to veterans resources. We need a vet peer mentor program. We need your help in educating faculty, staff, and students. We need to partner with other organizations. We need the expertise and support of sectors like the VA, the VFW, the American Legion. And engagement in the community, both internal and external. Community members and alumni can take pride in an institution's program for their veterans. It's not always easy being a military person in an academic world. Although we have hopefully passed enough through the Vietnam era and entered one where veterans are respected and their efforts appreciated, you may still find yourself in two worlds ideologically. Faculty and staff who have not had the same experiences as you may not understand your points of view and may at times challenge you. But this is an opportunity to offer an education to the educators. Form a coalition with faculty, staff, and administration. Reach out to faculty and fellow students. Increase their knowledge and their awareness of veteran-related issues. Help pave the pathway for the future and for the future veterans who will be following. You are truly trailblazers, and we need your help for us to continue to do the things that we do. You have already sacrificed so much for our country. What I'm asking you for today is even more. You've taken the steps to move back to civilian life. It cannot have been an easy transition. You have seen what we are doing wrong and what we're doing right. We need you to help us and to help your fellow veterans, those there today and those coming tomorrow. You know we're being successful and where we are not. Be a part of your veterans clubs. Talk to veterans advisors at your school. We don't know what we don't know. We need you to educate us. Even though you've done your time and perhaps want to leave the military behind, we need you. As a veteran sharing his story said, and I paraphrase, a national discussion is unfolding about who you are, what you need to succeed, and how your past experiences will shape your futures. You are the narrators of your own history. If you don't take control over how the story is written, then it will be written for you. Make it the best story possible. Again, I want to thank you for your service and wish you the best wishes for all your future endeavors. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to watch a short video that was put together by Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth, former Director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs and OIF veteran. The video will take less than 2 minutes, and after that, we'll go to our breakout sessions. The breakout sessions will be covering 2 different topics. If you're interested in financial challenges, you'll be going out the back, to the left, into the circus room. If you're interested in health challenges, just stay put. And so we'll watch this video, and then from there we can break out. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth. Thank you for inviting me to speak at your conference. I wish I could be there in person today. Thank you to the educators and administrators involved in today's conference for your dedication to helping our veterans succeed. And thank you to the veterans for being here today. I know that we still have a long way to go to make sure that our vets have the tools you need to transition into successful civilian careers. This includes making sure you are able to take advantage of the education benefits that you earned. The transition from the military into civilian life, especially into life as a student, can be a tough one. Don't hesitate to ask for help if you find yourself struggling or just in need of a little help. Having a support system is important for your success. I know the organizers here have been working hard to bring you informative guest speakers, resources, and other tools that will help you be successful students. You're one of the best sources of support for each other. So please, take what you learn at this conference back to your buddies who aren't here today. Remember, you survived basic, you survived crazy second lieutenants like I was, and many of you survived war. You can do this. It ain't nothing. Thank you, and enjoy the conference.
All right, at this time, we can make the transition to the breakout sessions, either in here, the ballroom, or the circus room next door. Thank you. Ask the presenters for the health challenges to please come forward. Mr. Miser and your group. Representatives from Danville, VA. Go out there and just straight down. Next door. At least that's where I thought I saw it. You guys have any type of presentation, John? You guys don't have any PowerPoint or anything, do you? Yeah. You do? We should. All right. Yeah, we have a big old PowerPoint. I'm going to move this up here. Have a seat over to the right where the microphones are. Okay, we'll see. Those working? We back on? All right. At this time, we'll start our VA panel. We got some people from the Vet Center and the Danville VA, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Thank you.
Maybe. I'm clicking. There it goes. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? My name's Hillary Edgerly. I'm the Assistant Chief of Social Work Service at the VA in Danville. I'm going to start us off with Tim Kohlbecker, who is our Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Clinical Team Coordinator. And then we're going to go through and talk a little bit about Vet Center services, and then I'll finish up with traumatic brain injury and other injuries and how to access VA care. So I will turn it over to Tim.
Yeah, that one. Welcome to everyone. I've never done a PowerPoint before, so this is going to be my inaugural try, thanks to Hillary. First, I want to say, for anybody here who served, thank you for your service to your country. Number two, I am proud and honored to serve veterans in my present position. A little bit about me, I've been in the government way too long. I've worked over 30 years. I came out to the Danville VA from the Syracuse VA where I was running a program for homeless veterans, and then decided I wanted to work with those who were fighting. So came out here in '93, I believe, and started the PTSD program at the Danville VA. If it tells you anything about my own mental health, I had a choice between going to Florida, Tampa, or Danville at the same time, and look where I'm at. There was other reasons. It was a good call. So I'm very honored to work with veterans. I think if we can't take care of our veterans, what can we do? All right, so I'm here to talk about some of the psychological impacts of PTSD, and I will see if I can make this slideshow work. Oh, apps, very good. All right, PTSD. Up to a third of student veterans may be struggling with what we call the invisible wounds of war. That would be TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, depression, and post-traumatic stress. A little bit about PTSD. It's gone by various names over the years: shell shock, combat fatigue, soldier's heart, war neurosis, et cetera, et cetera. Then in 1980, it became officially known as post-traumatic stress disorder. TBI, Hillary's going to talk more about TBI, but that is what we call the signature wound of the war. 3/4 of the injuries that you're seeing in the present war are coming from explosive mechanisms as opposed to gunfire. All right, definition of PTSD. I'm not going to read that to you, which is the one problem I have with PowerPoints. You probably have a pretty good idea of what a traumatic event is. And it's not, we don't deal with just combat PTSD. In our clinic at the VA in Danville, it's any kind of military-related trauma. So they can come from direct combat. I've had people in my office who were in graves registration, who were dealing with dead bodies day in and day out. I have a particular gentleman right now who is from the Vietnam era who was a chaplain's assistant who worked in a hospital in Vietnam where they were taking care of wounded soldiers day in and day out. Interesting, just real interesting story. This particular gentleman, he still comes to one of our groups, and he was at one of his grandson's football games the other day. And as many of our vets do, he goes and stands by himself or sees guys standing by themselves and figures they're probably combat veterans as well. Went down and stood next to the fence next to a guy, and the guy looked at him. They looked at each other. The guy looked at him again. He goes, "I know you." And they finally figured out that the chaplain's assistant had held this guy's hand for over 24 hours in a hospital in Vietnam while he was awaiting his surgery. And the patient recognized him. And they had not known each other, and they were living in the same town, which was pretty wild. So they had quite a nice reunion. It was quite an experience for both of them. We also deal with, we can't forget, military sexual trauma, which 1 in 5 military service women are sexually assaulted or dealing with military sexual trauma, 1 in 100 for males. So anyway, so there's the definition. What I see as the real definition is this is what we tell the guys. It's a very normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. If you think about what somebody goes through in combat, that's not normal. The way they react to it is often pretty normal for what they're dealing with. And I'll get to that again in a second. We have readjustment issues as well as PTSD symptoms. Readjustment issues such as the stigma, missing the camaraderie of their fellow soldiers. They come home and they have difficulty reintegrating with family. You know, wife's been taking care of the kids, the bills, the house, everything, and now all of a sudden he wants getting back to doing the job he used to always do, and they're doing it different ways. Difficulty interacting with civilians, which we'll get to that a little bit later. Sometimes they have a loss of direction, loss of purpose. You know, they felt very purposeful serving in the military, like they had a duty. Symptoms, some of the symptoms of PTSD, there's 4 clusters. We have intrusive symptoms, which is intrusive thoughts, you know, thoughts that come at them about traumatic things that happened. Nightmares, flashbacks, triggered by different sights, smells, sounds, movies, books, pictures, anything, then all of a sudden, boom, here come the memories. And they may react to that physiologically as well, where the heart starts pounding, breathing gets a little rapid. All signs and symptoms in the intrusive category. In the avoidance category, that would stand to reason. That is trying to avoid thoughts and it's the internal reminders, avoiding thoughts and feelings about what happened. External reminders, avoiding people, places, conversations, not wanting to talk about what happened, much less think about it. Next, we have the negative alterations. This is all new. This whole new category came out this September. Alterations in arousal and reactivity. What that means is inability to experience positive emotions, decreased interest in activities, negative beliefs and expectations about self and world, and persistent and distorted blame of self or others, and persistent negative emotional state. Basically being pretty depressed. All these symptoms come with different intensity levels and different frequency levels. You can put it on a scale, and if someone has PTS between 0 and 100, someone will fit on there. We also have delayed onset. Delayed onset is somebody may be doing fairly well. They come home from a war, they get a job, they go to school, whatever they're doing, they're staying busy, they're raising kids. All of a sudden, some type of trauma hits, some sort of crisis hits, and boom, here come the memories that they were holding back, or they may go out on a disability. We had some years back, World War II veterans were starting to retire. All of a sudden, we had an influx in our clinic and clinics across the country of World War II veterans, their wives saying, wow, he's a little more irritable, he's tossing and turning at night, he seems to be having nightmares, etc. Well, their brains were no longer busy as they used to be. They're not as active, not as busy, and all of a sudden all those memories start coming back that they kept pushing under the carpet for so long. All right. Prevalence. 61% of men, 51% of women experience a traumatic event in their lifetime. 25% experience multiple traumas. Lifetime PTSD, 9.7 for women, 3.6 for men. In the wars, here's what we have seen. Vietnam, 30% have had or do have some degree of PTSD in their lifetime. The Gulf War, 10. Afghanistan, you can see 6 to 11.5. Iraq, 13 to 20%. And these were government figures that came out. Consequences, I have a typo on there. I realized that this morning when I was looking. 88% of men is not 9% of women. It's 79% of women. Though maybe they are more resilient than us. Have a comorbid diagnosis. Generally, that's going to be depression, substance abuse, anxiety disorder, panic disorder. We also have from the war, of course, the problem with TBIs. And I'm going to skip the physical issues till a little bit later. Student veterans. They're 4% of all students nationwide. And you can see 73% are female, 27%, or 73% male, 27% female. They're married more so than their fellow college students. They have dependents. 84% are over age 24. And Illinois has the 7th largest veteran population in the country. So you can see it's a little different group than what you're going to see out of the normal college student, and they have more responsibilities probably than what you're going to see out of a normal college student. In Illinois, 76,000 veterans from the present war, 82% were male, 16% female. 31,000 accessed education benefits in 2012, 90% completed one deployment. And along with that, for those who served in combat, 40%, somewhere around 40% are completing multiple tours. 78% are below the age of 40. Classroom issues, musculoskeletal problems. Obviously from the wounds, amputations, joint pain, back pain. We had a guy come into our office not too long ago, and he brought his backpack, his helmet, his boots, everything that he had. And he said, here, check this out. I went over to just pick it up, and I thought, oh my God, they're wearing this every day. They're jumping in and out of trucks, jumping off things, around things. They're walking through the mountains. They're ending up with all sorts of musculoskeletal problems. I have a particular guy right now he has a terrible ankle problem where they're thinking about having to amputate it based solely on the fact that he did so much work in the mountains of Afghanistan. Discomfort in a standard desk. It's hard for some of them to sit in those hard, rigid surfaces. Some of them are going to have trouble, obviously, using a keyboard. It could be joint problems, finger problems, hand problems, etc. Tinnitus and hearing loss. Think about all the blasts they're experiencing. It's going to affect their hearing. They may have a very difficult time sitting in a class hearing a professor. Adjustment issues in the classroom on campus. Distraction / hypervigilance, startle response. These guys are trained to assess for threats. One of the first questions I always ask somebody when we're assessing them for PTSD is, all right, I say, all right, if you go to a restaurant, where do you sit? Invariably, they're saying, I'm in a booth, or I'm sitting with my back to a wall, my eyes on an exit, and my eyes on everybody else. I said, all right, then how about the mall? I don't go to the mall. All right, the grocery store, my wife goes. I said, what if you have to go? I know where it is, I get it, and I get out. That's a survival skill that they learned in the military that, fortunately or unfortunately, comes home with them and doesn't shut down real well. So consequently, we have people who are what we call hypervigilant, and you can imagine them sitting in a classroom of students. I had one guy come back. He had one semester left at U of I. He was having trouble sitting through the classes. So we did, to spare all the details, some therapy with him. He was able to make it, but he had to sit in the back or sit on the side where he could see the door and where everybody was in front of him. They don't like having people behind them. They do not like having to feel that something's coming up behind them. Again, it's a survival skill that they learned in the military that just hasn't shut